Hello fantasy fans, and welcome back to Thursday Night SmackDown. As always, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Jameson Whiskey, a high-calibered whiskey made only for the highest caliber of man. Nick, glad to see you.
Glad to see you too, Scorgasm. Well, welcome to Thursday Night SmackDown. Let's get right into last week's recap. I've got to start out with the Clash of the Titans. This game was definitely a high-point game, a high-speed game. We saw WTF come out with the victory, the high 150s. We saw a hard loss for Team Kunas's. He really just couldn't get it together at the end. And it's hard to compete against somebody with the experience that WTF has.
Absolutely. I mean, WTF's team owner, Oop, he was an All-American tailback for the New Sarpy Roadrunners. Set rushing records and touchdown records there. Almost held the record for most touchdowns in a game.
Yeah, that one called back.
That one called back there at the end. I think everyone remembers that.
That was a tough night.
That was a tough night for him. They still won the game. If nothing, he's infamous for it, for the one that got called back.
Well, then after the season, once he retired from the football game, he got into the football business.
Yeah, he had his refereeing business, his fantasy play calling business. This man. Literally, if anyone can say, this is the man that lived football, and still does.
And that goes to show in the outcome of the game. It was just one of those things where Kunas has really struggled and just couldn't make it at the end. But next we had the game of the week. This was the one everybody was watching for to see who was going to come up, who was going to come down. We had the Commissioner Jablomi against Hot Shot. Really, this game was anybody's game going into it. Tough thing for Commissioner Jablomi. He suffered an injury early on. Carson Palmer came out of the game, and that really set the speed for his week.
That was a tough loss for him. He had the quarterback woes. Carson Palmer goes down early in the game. He only gets 7 points, and Carson Palmer was on track to put up some pretty respectable numbers for that game.
Well, and I tell you what else, he put up quite the gamble too.
Absolutely, with running back Bobby Rainey, that was I'm not sure if he flipped a coin or not before he put him in his roster.
Well, in this league, we can't make decisions like that. You can do great waiver pickups. There's still some decent trade opportunities out there for different teams struggling each week. And the commissioner just made poor decisions on this. He's got to be better than that if he expects to not take home the Sanchez, which is a real opportunity now for him.
Absolutely.
He may end up with that, that loss was crucial for him.
He's a loss away from bottom 4 for sure.
That's exactly right.
You pulled off the win last week over El Rey Montada.
That was a tough game. I'm going to tell you, I'm glad you brought that up. Going into Monday night, we had Philadelphia, we had North Carolina Panthers, and I'm going to tell you, nobody knew how was Cam going to do against this defense. How was Sanchez going to do handling with Macklin, with Williams, some of these threats they have. And
absolutely.
By my saving grace, Macklin just couldn't get the targets. I don't know if they don't have that relationship built in yet, if they just can't get there yet. LaShawn McCoy contributed to the first win of any season.
This is truly the first time that anyone in the league can say that LaShawn McCoy was their saving grace.
That's exactly right. Lucky for me, he put up 12 last week, 8 this week, which saved me from 3 coming out of Macklin. That were the only 2 players that really had an impact against us. And I was able to take that W home and really move me up that notch, try and get me out of that loser's bracket and get into the champion spot, because that's what it's all about. We're all trying to take home that victory money.
Absolutely. Well, not only are we trying to take home the money, we're trying to not get kicked out of the houses because that Sanchez is on the mantle.
Who is named after that quarterback, that Mark Sanchez.
Mark Sanchez, he's just terrible.
Let's get into the bottom of the barrel battle. Let's talk about Scorgasm, Moberg. Tell me what happened. How'd you secure that win?
But it was tough. I felt great going into the week. I had some great players put up some good numbers, respectable numbers, all averaging in that 15 to 20 range.
That's what you need.
And then I caught some strife. I had a receiver in Doug Baldwin for Seattle, put up 5 points for me. I had Lamar Miller, only put up 1.5 points, suffered an injury, missed about 1.25 quarters of play. And then I had Chris Ivory, only put up 5 points. So I got nervous towards the end.
I can really see how that would be. Chris Ivory picked up on a trade, seemed like he had a lot of potential. He just hasn't done it yet. He's got a lot of potential. He's obviously an athlete, and I think he can do more for you. We've just got to see him targeted the right way against the right defense.
I'm going to keep my faith in Chris Ivory, because the New York Jets, if they want to win, they have to establish a ground game. The one game they do win, Chris Ivory puts up 18 fantasy points. So I think the scenario is clear. Get me my fantasy points from Ivory, and New York Jets wins. I hope somebody's watching up.
Well, definitely. I can tell you another thing that contributed to Moberg's just horrific loss was he just couldn't get the numbers out of the key players when they needed to
What really
score.
contributed to Moberg's loss was Moberg.
That's exactly.
He starts
poor coaching, poor drafting.
Just terrible, just all around terrible.
Charles Barkley says it best. Moberg is terrible.
That's right. He starts Nile Davis, a backup running back, to Jamal Charles.
To -1.5.
Who gets negative 1.5 points. He had 1 touch, and he fumbled it on that 1 touch.
And let's not forget the injured reserve player who got a goose egg for him, which was better than Nile Davis, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
Now, I'll tell you where he succeeded.
Once again, we see in fantasy where a goose egg is better than one of the players.
Absolutely. Which seems to be a rarity in the real world, but in fantasy sports, it's definitely a possibility. But I'm going to tell you, I want to go back to Moberg's choice on his defense. They put up 31 astounding points. I think we had 4 sacks.
4 sacks, interception, punt return. That defense was on fire.
Philadelphia is the real deal, folks. I tell you, Moberg, you had to be sweating at the end there. His kicker, who puts up 15 to 20 consistently, came out in single digits. And, with Sanchez on fire, again with that Williams connection, I really was nervous. Hey, they were going to back off the game, get out of the passing, start the ground game a little more, and then kick those field goals, which can be huge in this league.
When your kicker is getting 3 points a pop, 4 points a pop, and then when your defense is scoring 17 million touchdowns, I was getting very nervous.
Well, but hey, look, you came home with the win. You maintained your composure. You got your players in the game, and that's what gets you the W.
Winning's winning, right?
Winning's winning at the end of the day, and losing's losing. Nobody knows that more than Moberg, who is a real possibility for that Sanchez again.
In the ideal scenario, Moberg can win out and finish with a 7-7 record in the regular season. If everybody else loses, then he might have a shot at being in the top 4.
I just
don't see it happening.
I just can't see it. Not with the choices he's been making, not with the trades and the waiver pickups he's been making, or hasn't been making, rather.
So
look, let's look at next week's recap. I mean, not recap, but see who's playing together this week, how they're going to do. Where would you like to start at?
You know what? Let's start with the, might as well get it out the way, the Beats by Ray multiple scoregasm game.
Absolutely. I think both of us feel confident with our teams. Both of us projected to score very reasonable games this week. I picked up Phil Dawson, San Francisco kicker, who's a great kicker. He can put the 50-yarders in there.
He definitely has that five-point leg on him.
That's a tough thing to deal with. Other than that, I feel confident. I've got healthy players back. I'm hoping to see A.J. Green really find his way in this. Peyton Manning, who, of course, is always a steady producer for me. I really feel confident this week. I think I'm going to take it. I think it's going to be a tough battle. I'm going to have to get with my guys, just make sure they understand we've got to have a win this week. We've got to get out of this loser's bracket, move into that championship bracket if we want to win this.
I don't feel as confident as you about this week. I'm a winner, so I always feel confident in that aspect. But I made some gambles this week. Hopefully it'll pay off for me. I picked up a surprise running back that I'm not going to tell you about.
Okay.
And I also picked up a surprise tight end.
Okay.
Starting him in the flex along with Antonio Gates. So, they're not projected to do very high, but I've just got that feeling that this is going to be their breakout week. So this week's either going to make me or break me as far as the league goes.
I think it's definitely an important, pivotal week for you. Let's move on to the game of the week. What game does everybody out there need to watch this week?
I think that it's going to have to be WTF and Hot Shot in the game of the week again.
I think that's definitely the powerhouse game. Again, another Clash of the Titans setup. But I'm going to have to disagree, and I'm going to have to say, Commissioner Jablomi, Coonasses. I think that game is a tough point for the commissioner. He's got to come ahead here, and I'm going to tell you, Coonasses, he swings for the fences every time.
He absolutely does. He's not ranked in the top 2 in the league for nothing.
That's exactly right.
He has a great team. He does great players. He knows when to play them. And you got to look at Commissioner Jablomi. This is a big week for him. A loss puts him in the bottom 4.
That's exactly right.
So he's sweating it.
He's got to be. I have a feeling he's going to bring a surprise trade at the end for all of us, show up, and he's going to definitely put up a good performance. I don't know that if he's got enough gas to really push it across to get past Coonasses, but I think it's going to be a great game. Well, look, let's look back at that other game we were just discussing, the WTF Hot Shot game. We're going to see high scoring, that's for sure.
I think WTF, he's back in his rhythm for sure. He is coming off a huge win over the king of the Coonasses, putting him back in the top. And I just feel like, he knows that a Jablomi loss here and a win for him guarantees him a spot in the top 4.
That's exactly right. So he's got to win this week. That'll lock him into that slot where the Sanchez is not an opportunity for him, that he will be a winner at the end of this season.
And he has proven so far to be a winner. Now, on the flip side of that, Hotshot, he is 3 wins away from a guaranteed slot. He has to get 3 of the next 4 weeks have to be wins for him. So he's going to be trying to line all his ducks up.
He does. And fortunately for the commissioner, he's going to have a few less challenging weeks ahead of him. But I'm going to tell you, in this league, like we always have said, history tells the truth. You've got to come out hard. You've got to come out fast. You've got to watch those waiver pickups if you want to continue to be successful, even against a slower team, somebody Mollberg caliber. We've got to be a strong player. Well, let me tell you, how do you feel about the Mollberg comeback king?
I'm actually interested to see the outcome in this one. The Mollberg definitely needs to win out to have some form of saving grace. He's probably going to be playing in the Sanchez bracket for sure. But I understand there's a wager on this game.
There is. I don't think that we've gotten a true response yet from Mollberg on how he's going to feel about that. The league has voted and chosen a few different options of what Mollberg can choose from. I don't think he's really got the brass to really make that call. I think he sees the loss in the future.
I do too.
I think that he's wise in seeing that. I think Comeback King is going to do well. I think that he absolutely has the potential to beat Mollberg as long as he doesn't have, again, another 31-point performance from a defense. Again, he has a 20-point kicker every week, so those can make major differences. Benny absolutely has to watch his injured reserve. He's got to watch to make sure he doesn't make those same mistakes that Mollberg is definitely not going to make again this week if he wants to take that W home.
I completely agree. I believe that Mollberg's going to have his ducks in the line on this one, especially from, he's been getting some harsh treatment from the league, so
he really has.
Eventually that's going to set in. This has been since week 1, so eventually that's going to do something.
That's what I think he can make the adjustments. I just think he's got to put the time into it and the effort into it. I know that Oak Forest right now is somebody that he's really behind, but if he doesn't get his head back into the game, he is definitely going to end up with that Sanchez on the mantle, and I'm pretty sure that teenage girlfriend is going to drop him like a bad habit. Well, how do you feel about tonight's game, Thursday night game in Miami, Sun Life Stadium? We've got great weather, low of 60 degrees. This is going to be perfect fall football weather.
I absolutely think it is. Buffalo, Miami tonight, that's two. Really, I'm curious to see how it's going to go. Neither one of those teams are known for being passing teams, so this is going to be what line wants to win the most. It's going to be this game is going to be won in the trenches. You've got a good running back in Lamar Miller. Buffalo does the running back by committee with Fred Jackson as their goal line man. I'm thinking that this is going to be an all-run game. This game's going to be over quick because the clock's never going to stop.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. It's definitely the running game. I hate in fantasy that the line doesn't get the credit they deserve because they are definitely going to be a strong asset in this game to see how they perform outside of defenses. I really don't know how Miami's defense is going to do against Buffalo. I think they've got the potential early on in the season. They put up some great numbers, and I think that if they can stop the run, if they can stop that Fred Jackson touchdown score, they can really get somewhere with this.
I completely agree. Fred Jackson and Lamar Miller, both the running backs, big running backs for both teams, they're both favoring some injuries right now. So that's going to play into effect too.
Absolutely. Well, and as always, we're going to end our segment with Thursday night smack talk.
The best part.
Scoregasm, I hate to tell you, buddy, get used to being next to Mole. You're going to end up in that loser's bracket if you don't end up with the Sanchez. And I know your girlfriend, it is not going to end well when I mount that mantle made for the Sanchez.
Oh, yes. Classic. Well, Nick, I just want to tell you that, Eric and I talked it over, and we've agreed to let you have the guest bedroom, because after I beat you tonight, you're going to lose the rest of the season. You're probably going to run home crying and forget to set your lineup next week. So, when Randy kicks you out the house for the Sanchez being on the mantle, just know that you have a place to stay here.
Well, thank you for those kind words. Well, as always, we'd like to thank all of our viewers. Obviously, our sponsors, Jameson Whiskey.
Great people to work with, high caliber whiskey, great sponsors.
Highest caliber, man. Absolutely. Thank you. God bless. Good night.
See you next Thursday, 7 p.m.